Okay. Okay. All right. May have Madam Clerk, Madam City Manager, have a roll call.
Yes, sir, Mayor.
Good evening. They're not on? They're not on? Jeff?
The microphone's on.
Good evening. Mr. Badura?
I'm not sure.
Here.
Mr. Runyon?
No.
They're not on.
Messing with my recording.
Now on.
All right, good evening. Mr. Badura?
Here.
Mr. Runyon? Mr. Newman?
Here.
Ms. Plow?
Here.
Mr. Vine? Here. Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mayor Benjamin?
Here. I'd like to call on the Boy Scouts from Troop 515 to do the Pledge of Allegiance from the Church of Latter-day Saints. Come on, boys. Come up front.
Shall we pray? Dear Heavenly Father, as this is Valentine's week, which is symbolized by the heart, here we are tonight gathered at City Hall in the heart of this city. These leaders are here tonight to represent those who come from the east, the west, the north, the south, those from uptown, downtown, and out of town, those that are long-timers and those that are newcomers, those from shelters and those from penthouses, perhaps. So, Father, as we are gathered here tonight in the heart of this city, we pray that you would give us your heart. We know that our heart can be so desperately wicked at times, so we need your heart. We pray for the desires of our heart. We pray for the delights of our heart. We pray for the dependence of our heart to trust in you. We pray for the discernment of our heart. We pray for the discipline of our heart. And lastly, we pray for the diligence of our heart that we might walk not as unwise, but as wise, making the best use of the time. So, Lord, on this Valentine's week, we give you our heart. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you.
That was a sweet invocation, Chaplain. Thank you. Very sweet.
Mayor Benjamin and council, at this time, I would ask that council adopt the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Please, Mr. Newman.
one item, we need to hold agenda item 20. This was deferred from the previous meeting with the expectation that staff would have the opportunity to meet with the neighborhood. Both of those meetings are Thursday and this coming Tuesday. So, excuse me, 21?
21.
20 and 21. So, staff is going to be meeting with them on Thursday, so we could push.
So again, it's holding
meeting.
items 20 and 21. I'm sorry.
I want 20 and 21.
Held.
Yes.
You got it?
Can hear, are we holding 20 and 21?
Yes, yes, ma'am. I believe so. All right. Any other amendments?
You want both?
Seeing none, we'll move to the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Badura?
Aye.
Mr. Newman?
Aye.
Ms. Plow?
Aye.
Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. Does that cause any other issues, Madam City Manager?
No, sir. I think one of the applicant was here for one of the items, item 20, in an attempt to resolve the questions. But I think if either way is fine, whatever council prefers.
I still need to hold 20. 21 was the one that I was discussing about Ms. Hampton needing to confer, but I'll confer with Mr. Kempson afterwards.
So 20 and 21 will be
It's
held.
still 20 and 21.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay. The city manager indicated we had some citizens who wanted to speak on the items related to the agenda. We can have that public input now, or we can go ahead and wait until we bring up those resolutions. So it might be, however, you guys feel so motivated.
Mayor, if we could,
Well, I think he wanted, that was part of it.
Okay, oh, let's do that. And my only request would be that we follow the rules established by council on terms of citizen participation, the time limits and the like. Okay, thank you, Howard. So let's keep on. I'm sorry, if there's no other input, let's keep on moving through the agenda.
Yes, sir.
Please.
Our first presentation is the acknowledgement of our longtime community members. I think that Ms. Devine will recognize or acknowledge one community member, and Mr. Newman will do so for another.
Thank you, City Manager. Of course, many of you all in this room, I'm sure, have been made aware that we lost a lion in the community recently. Ms. Doris Hildebrand was president of the Waverly Neighborhood Association. I know that name is one that's familiar to everyone, as she's made a significant impact on not only her neighborhood, but many neighborhoods in the city of Columbia, as well as our city staff. This past weekend, her homegoing services were held, and we just felt it appropriate if we acknowledge her here with a moment of silence. So I'd ask you all to join me with that now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Newman. Ms. Devine?
And the same day that we laid to rest Ms. Doris Hildebrand, we were actually able to end the day on a much happier note by celebrating the 100th birthday of Miss Elise Martin. Most of you know Miss Martin, who has been a stalwart of this community for many, many years. She actually was one of the brainchilds behind the Drew Wellness Center. When the city was looking at redoing Drew Park, Ms. Martin asked, along with Ms. Myrtle Gordon and Ms. Catherine Belfield, who unfortunately we've lost both of them, had asked Councilman Cromartie at the time to look at redoing Drew Park, and now we have the phenomenal Drew Wellness Center. And so Ms. Plow, Mr. Newman, and myself were able, on behalf of this city, to present or say happy birthday to Ms. Martin, but also to dedicate the multipurpose room at Drew Wellness Center in honor of Ms. Martin. And so now the multipurpose room in Drew Wellness Center is called the Elise Jones Martin Multipurpose Center, multipurpose room, and is still available for the entire community to utilize for meetings and such. There's a plaque that is on outside of the multipurpose room. And so just wanted to celebrate Ms. Martin and let everybody join in saying happy birthday. She actually flew out at 5 a.m., where probably most of us were still asleep, in flight to California, where she's going to be staying with her daughter for a while. But I did have an opportunity to speak with her last night, and again, the three of us were able to present her the plaque on Saturday, and she was very excited. So just wanted to share that with the citizens of Columbia and just say that, you know, it's really great to be able to give people flowers while they're here. And anyone who knows Ms. Martin knows that she is just an extraordinary, loving woman, and truly has impacted this community in lots of ways. And so we're very happy to join in that celebration.
Absolutely.
And the mayor had the flu, and so we told him to stay home.
The mayor's still getting over the flu, so if I choose not to shake your hand, it's not because I don't want to shake your hand tonight. I would be remiss if I didn't also say I spoke to Ms. Martin on her birthday, and those of you who know her know she's probably the most graceful woman you'll ever meet, a sweet and gentle woman. So we're so happy to have her here. And like many of you and some of you in this room who were very close to Mrs. Doris Hildebrand, our hearts were broken. We knew that she was ill. I think many of us didn't expect her to be taken from us so suddenly. Mrs. Hildebrand had a incredibly gifted way of getting you straight, but being the sweetest she possibly could in doing it. Always positive, always empowering, always on your side, always prayerful, and not just the Waverly community, but the city has lost a real guardian of our historic sites, a guardian of our culture, a guardian of I think all things that are good about Columbia. Losing her, so we very much miss Mrs. Hildebrand. Thank you. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you, Mayor. At this time, we'll move into our second presentation for the evening, the recognition of Miss High School America, South Carolina, the Honorable Mayor Stephen K. Benjamin, and myself.
Okay. Would you let me say something first? I'm excited, and probably most of us up here, including the city manager, have literally known Carlisle Carrington Cooper since she was born. And I would say that while we're all very impressed with her many successes in her very young life, we are not at all surprised by her successes. She comes from a long line of incredibly talented and gifted people who have given their time and energy to make Columbia a very special place. Indeed, her family history goes back so far that they had members of city council in the post-Reconstruction era serving when that type of service amongst African Americans was still very much in its infancy in this country. Her father's side of the family and her mother's side of the family, I think you will find incredible contributions through the era of civil rights and the areas of medicine and education. Her mother, Dr. Tracy Cooper, is the chair of our State Board of Education, former State Teacher of the Year. We are very proud of Carlisle's most recent accomplishment, and we know that it is probably the very first in a long line of successes to come for she and Chandler and Little Noble as well. So we're happy to have Carlisle here with us. You want to come on up front, Carlisle?
Mayor Benjamin,
Teresa?
why don't we join Carlisle and present her
Isn't
token that we've gotten for her? I told Tracy when I learned.
Isn't
this
she stunning,
Carlisle-
y'all? Isn't
She
she stunning?
is. I mean, but she is not only beautiful on the outside, this is what I told her mother that morning, she's just as beautiful on the inside, just like her mother, her grandmother, her auntie, and her sister. And we're proud of you, darling.
and we will continue to look for great things from the Young and Cooper families.
We should have asked Carlisle to tell us her platform, and I know that it's
come on,
with
Carlisle.
dentistry. And young,
Carla, how tall are those heels, I might add? Please. Just navigate them, too.
I'm going to do this. So as Miss South Carolina High School America, I get to travel the state promoting my own personal platform of the Create a Smile campaign, focusing on educating our younger generation about the importance of dental health. So I get to go to schools and civic organizations, going through presentations and books, talking about dental health. And I also have the honor of being able to promote the national platform of the organization, the BRAVE program, focusing on bullying prevention. So I get to go to schools and civic organizations talking about bullying prevention and also getting to share my own personal experience with bullying. Thank you.
That's wonderful.
And now, Mr. Baker, we would like to come forward, our Senior Assistant City Manager, to discuss the Let's Move Columbia Gold Medal presentation.
At least I'm taller than she is. Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, City Manager, first I would like to thank our Let's Move partners who are here tonight. Nikki Williams, Vice President of Education of the Adventure Children's Museum. Ms. Karen Coltrane, Adventure's Chief Executive Officer, and Ava Dean with Palmetto Health. I think they are here. If you Thank you. I would also like to thank the city staff who work on our Let's Move initiative. Wanda Austin, our Let's Move Columbia Coordinator, Ms. Jacqueline Williams, Program Coordinator for Parks and Recreation Department and Coordinator of the city's Gardens Program, Community Gardens Program, Ms. Lee Allison Thompson, Parks and Recreation Resource Specialist. The City of Columbia was recognized at the National League of Cities annual conference in Austin, Texas, for achieving gold medals in all 5 Let's Move categories. This is the highest distinction a community can receive from the Let's Move Cities, Towns, and Counties initiative. Let's Move Cities, Towns, and Counties is a major component of First Lady Michelle Obama's comprehensive Let's Move initiative, which is dedicated to solving the childhood obesity epidemic within this generation. Medals are awarded to local elected officials based on achievements in each of the following 5 categories. Goal 1, start early, start smart. Goal 2, my plate, your place. Goal 3, smart servings for students. Goal 4, model food services. Goal 5, active kids at play. All designed to improve the health and fitness from both a physical aspect and nutritional aspect. The National League of Cities also recognized Councilwoman Tamika Isaac Devine in the Most Dedicated Local Elected Official Award category for her tenacious dedication to Let's Move Columbia and countless hours spent improving the health of residents in Columbia. With approximately 500 cities, towns, and counties participating, the City of Columbia has joined an elite group of 23 cities and counties across the nation that have earned 5 gold medals as a result of their leadership and dedication to ending childhood obesity and improving the health of their residents. 23 out of 500. I would like to thank all of our partners in the community and the city staff in the Public Relations Department and the Department of Parks and Recreation have been committed to improving the health of our children, adults, and spreading the Let's Move Columbia message. Mr. Vine, would you please have a word?
I just say thank you, and thank you to our partners, and thank you to the mayor who allowed me and his wife to serve as co-chairs of Let's Move Columbia. And I'm really excited about everything we've done, and I'm even more excited about all the things that we have planned. So for my colleagues here, and Ms. Wilson keeps saying that we need a special projects coordinator, I think we need to think about that, because there's a lot more things that we need to do. But we need to take a picture with our partners.
Sure, absolutely. City Manager, I do want to entertain a motion to take away Alicia Uzi's camera. She's been around City Hall snapping that camera all day today.
I would need a lot of help to do that, Mayor. At this time, we have two presentations from the Honorable Tamika Isaac Devine, the first being American Heart Month.
And it's important. Allison did a great job, but for those of you, I mean, I interface with folks at the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National League of Cities on a regular basis, very regular basis, and Tamika really is in the vanguard, the leader nationally on this issue. There's a reason why we're always in the top two when it comes to Let's Move. She's taken the really grabbed the bull by the horns on this, and really thankful for her leadership, and that's very proud of you.
Thank you,
Tamika.
Mr. Mayor. And, I have to say, I mean, of course, Let's Move is my passion, as well as domestic violence, but I have to say the next two presentations are right up there on the things that are very, very important to me and our citizens, and ways that our city can be leaders. And so the next presentation, as most of you know, hopefully all of you know, February is American Heart Month. And it is the month that is designated to bring attention to heart disease in women. And so this past Friday was Go Red Day nationally, and we had an excellent press conference. Unfortunately, the mayor was traveling, so he couldn't join us, but Ms. Plow and Mr. Davis joined us, and we had several citizens who came decked in their red, and we celebrated or kicked off our month with National Wear Red Day. And it was a great opportunity for us to kick off our month. Starting on Friday, City Hall started going red, and so those of you who are, well, I guess it's dark now. When you go outside, you'll see City Council is illuminated in red. And again, we're one of the only governmental entities that when they ask for buildings to go red, there are not many buildings nationally that took on the challenge to go red. The White House goes red, I think the Washington Monument, some others, but Columbia City Hall also goes red for the month of February, so that is something great. We also have coming up on February 20th, which is in 2 weeks, we will have our Walk at Lunch Day. We're asking if people would join us here at City Hall at 12 noon, and we can go for a walk. We'll walk from City Hall to the State House and back. All of this is to bring attention and awareness to heart disease. We have red dress pins that are available in the back if anybody would like to pick them up, they are free. Most places you will have to pay for them, but we, the city, are giving these out. So please take a red dress. And then one of the things I'm very, very excited, every year we seem to add to this in our partnership with the American Heart Association. And so this year, for the first time, we will be having the inaugural Go Red for Women fashion show, which will be Friday, February 27th at 6:00 p.m. at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center. We will have a wonderful fashion show, and we will have some celebrity models, including our own Miss High School America. Carlisle Cooper will be one of our models, as well as our city manager and her daughter. And so we are just asking everybody to come out. City staff does have tickets. This is the only event out of all the events that we're doing for American Heart Month that has a cost to it. It will be $30, and with the exception of the minor expenses that we will have for putting on the fashion show, all proceeds will go to the American Heart Association. And so we would ask that people please come out and support this fashion show. It will be an extraordinary event here in the city of Columbia, and hopefully we will be able to raise lots of money to bring attention and awareness around heart disease in women, which one of the things I think is really hits home to most of us is that the number of women who are diagnosed with heart disease, 1 out of 3 women. However, 80% of these cases are preventable. And so we want to bring attention to this. We want to bring money back into our community with partners like Palmetto Health and Providence who work to prevent heart disease, specifically in women. And so we would just ask that people come out. Tickets, if anybody wants tickets, they can get them between now and the fashion show here at City Hall, or they can purchase tickets at the Columbia Metropolitan Convention Center.
Awesome. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. And your next item, you ready for that one?
And my next item, this is probably one of the longest standing things we have other than the Mayor's Walk Against Domestic Violence. It is Together We Can Read time again. Together We Can Read is a partnership that we've had for about 7 years with Richland One, in which we get readers to go into every single third grade class in the city of, in Richland One, to read to the students and then give each student their own copy of a book. This year's book, we always choose a book that has a South Carolina specific, and this year's book is First You Explore the Story of Young Charlestown by Rachel Haney. And this is the book. Each council member has a copy. Everyone on council has agreed to be a reader, as well as most of county council and school board members, as well as a lot of our community members. So this is the book that we will be reading this Thursday in every single third grade class in Richland One. And so I just ask that if, I think we have enough readers, Sharice, do we? We have enough readers. So we have enough readers. We're not recruiting any more readers, but I just wanted everyone to know that this is still something that is continuing our partnership with Richland One, and we're real excited that we are now still continuing this project. So that is it.
All right.
Any questions for my colleagues? Because I think everyone has their assignment where they're reading. Right, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Devine. At this time, council is asked to approve the consent agenda items numbers 5 through 19.
Is there a motion?
Second.
Is there discussion? Seeing none, we'll move the previous question, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Badura?
Aye.
Mr. Runyon?
Aye.
Mr. Newman?
Aye.
Ms. Plow?
Aye.
Ms. Devine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. So so St. Pat's is done, right? It's number
Done.
18, right?
It's done.
Okay. So just make sure everyone from 5 Points who came here to support the St. Pat's resolution, good to go. All right. So you can hang out with us as long as you want. All right. But I want to make sure we took care of it on the consent agenda.
Mayor,
All right. Mr. Badura.
I just want to make a comment. I have to congratulate 5 Points organizers for the festival that communicated all the neighborhood's concerns. They were very fast in responding to any questions, so congratulations for that. So we're looking forward to a really nice event. That's it.
This will be the best St. Pat's ever. Thanks, guys.
Ever.
Thank you. As we celebrate those centennial. All right.
I'm sorry, can I say one thing, Amy Beth? I was at Outspoken yesterday, and Brian mentioned that there's going to be a bike ride as part of St. Pat's as well? A bike ride? No. Okay, or they might be trying to coordinate something. So I was going to say, just that was the first I'd heard of it, and if that is the case, make sure that we know, because we want to make sure that through BPAC and other avenues, we're promoting that as well. Okay.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you guys for coming out again. All right. All right.
Mayor Benjamin, you have about 15 minutes before opening your public hearing associated with item 22.
Okay.
Are you interested in taking up any additional items at this time?
Sure. You want to get to 23?
Certainly. Ordinance first reading, number 23, ordinance number 2014-126, authorizing the city manager to execute a quitclaim deed from the City of Columbia to the South Carolina Department of Transportation for conveyance of .044 acre of city property identified as Richland County, TMS number 147050108. This is the Heritage Hills Water Pump Station site.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moving second. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Badura.
Aye.
Mr. Runyon.
Aye.
Mr. Newman.
Aye.
Ms. Plow.
Aye.
Mr. Vine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis. Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. I think we keep on moving we'll have enough time to come back to this, and I think enough time. Okay.
You want to
Let's
keep going?
I think we keep on moving, yes. Keep on moving through. 24 and 25, I anticipate will take up the most time. Let's go ahead and do 26.
26?
Let's 26
Sure.
quickly.
Item 26, resolution number R 2014-117, authorizing condemnation for easement acquisition for sanitary sewer force
So
main.
moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Badura.
Aye.
Mr. Runyon.
Aye.
Mr. Newman.
Aye.
Ms. Plow.
Aye.
Mr. Vine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Are there any committee reports or referrals before us, guys?
Brian.
Mr. Newman and Ms. Devine.
I've got two updates. For the upcoming public safety meeting at the end of the month, I wanted to move that we refer discussions of our emergency preparedness and use of force policies to the Public Safety Committee.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? With the previous question, clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Badura.
Aye.
Mr. Runyon.
Aye.
Mr. Newman.
Aye.
Ms. Plow.
Aye.
Mr. Vine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Ms. Devine?
Two items. One, I wasn't sure, Community and Economic Development, is there a scheduled meeting for that? No. I would like to add, I guess, an update on where we are for the affordable housing that we talked about a few months ago. I wanted to add that as an update.
Okay.
And then, two, I wanted to refer consideration, I think Mr. Williams is here. He wanted to ask council to consider holiday work policies on Martin Luther King Day. I would ask that we refer that to the Administrative and Policy Committee to discuss.
Okay. All right. That's a motion.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Move the previous question. Clerk, call the roll.
Mr. Badura.
Aye.
Mr. Runyon.
Aye.
Ms. Plow.
Aye.
Mr. Vine.
Aye.
Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye.
Madam Clerk, you check the schedules, calendars on the,
Yes, sir.
well, thank you.
And just for quick clarification, is anyone here to speak on the comprehensive plan land use element?
Ryan.
But you also here to speak on the other issues too, right, Ryan? Are you not? Okay. I just wanted to make sure we may just go ahead and move on with 24 and 25. For some of you who aren't regulars here, we have a public hearing that's set to start at 7 p.m., but we can't start before 7 p.m. So we're trying to make sure that if we had some lengthy items on the agenda, we took care of them before the time that meeting started. We still have another 10 minutes or so. I say we go ahead and get started with items 24 and 25. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Bly.
really under City Council Committee and referrals.
Will you pull up the mic a little closer?
Okay. I guess it's back to City Council Committee reports and referrals. I would like to ask if the city manager at our next meeting could give us an update on the Bull Street contract provisions and where we are in terms of some of the trigger dates for certain things to happen. It can be in a written format. It doesn't have to be publicly. You want it to go to committee? I was just asking for her to provide us a written update on where those triggers are.
Sure. Next meeting, that's Tuesday. The next.
Can you do it next Tuesday, or is, okay.
And I just want to clarify, do you want a report at at the evening meeting, or just want a written report emailed to council?
Yeah, but let's do it at the evening meeting.
Okay.
It's just an update. And again, my objective is really to focus on, I think it's been a long time since I read the agreement. There were some triggers when certain things were supposed to happen, and I just like the public to be updated. As background, Mayor and members of the City Council, we had a community forum meeting, and one of the items that came up at that meeting was questions about where we are with Bull Street. And I think the best way to do this is to review the contract and what the triggers are, so we can tell the public, you know, we have, that trigger is not here yet, and when it arrives, you know, we'll do thus and such. So.
I think early on, we actually discussed maybe doing something like that quarterly or on a pretty regular basis, so certainly, let's do that. Thank you. You guys want to wait 5 minutes and knock out 22, or just go ahead and get started?
I think you have to wait till, are you asking, should you get
What
started?
he's asking, he's asking about waiting the 5 minutes and doing 22 instead of starting 24 and making 22 people wait.
10,
Are there
11.
concerns about 24? I've understood most of the issues might be raised on item number 25.
Oh, well, on both of those. Just wanted to make
Okay,
sure. Just wanted to make sure. So,
And we want to make sure everybody who wants to speak can do that.
yeah. So why don't we give it 5 minutes? 5 minutes, and we'll take up item 22, and then we'll take up the other two. All right.
Yes, sir.
All right. 5 minute break, y'all. We got about 20-something people.
It should be on and everything? Yeah, it's already on.
Mayor Benjamin, while the staff is coming forward, can I ask for one point of clarification with Ms. Plow's request for Tuesday? You said the Bull Street contractual provision triggers. Are you referring to, I just want to make sure, the Bull Street Development Agreement, the triggers and the phases of the contract? In the development agreement document. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Good evening. I just have a few brief comments before turning it over to John Fellows and Emily Crow, and that is to thank you, to say thanks to quite a few people, the citizens who participated, to our terrific consultant and our staff, but primarily to you, City Council, for providing us this opportunity, and to administration for being very supportive of this. As you know, this is just our first step, as you will hear going forward. We have a lot more work to do, but it really is going to put us on the path to being a 21st century city. So with that, I will turn over the presentation to John Fellows.
Good evening. The reason why we're here to talk about the land use plan is for basically 4 points. One is just to update our current land use plan, as well as to create a vision and a guide for the entire community. And also, we're following this up with right behind the reality check and the ULI project that we had just a few falls ago, that really focused on how the whole entire region would develop over time. And as we have an increase in more employment and residents moving into the area, how are we going to deal with that particular development issue? And then the other component, and Emily will talk about this a little bit more in depth, but how do we take the land use plan and turn that into development regulations? We have not actually looked at our land use plan and our zoning and development regulations since the early 70s. So this is a really great opportunity to look at both of them together so that we can actually have really good development and have a process that's going to work well as the community continues to grow. Just a little bit about the ULI reality check that we had 2 falls ago. It talked a lot about infrastructure and transportation from a regional perspective, as well as economic drivers within the community and the counties and regions that make up the Midlands, as well as efficient development throughout the area and the green space. And I think you'll see these common themes from the reality check were things that the community and the public meetings talked about, as well as what you actually see in the draft plan that's right before you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Emily to go through the plan.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here this evening. My name is Emily Crow. I'm a planning consultant with McBride Dale Clarion. I've been working with the city for about the last year on this comprehensive plan update for the land use section. And I just want to say that it's been a really great experience working in this community. We had a lot of really valuable public input in this process, and that really was what drove the development of the plan that you have presented before you this evening. We did this plan update as part of a 3-part process where we looked at the kind of existing conditions in the city to establish current characteristics and context in which to plan. And that process involved quite a bit of stakeholder input. We did initial interviews with a lot of the neighborhood associations, and we conducted a kind of 3-day visioning workshop in June where we had 220 people come out and help us, kind of set the vision for what Columbia looks like in the next 10 or 20 years. And we also backed that up with some existing conditions research and forecasting of trends that you can find here in the plan. And then from July onward, we worked on actually writing the recommendations in the plan. And all of that is helping us, again, as John said, to set the city up to really look at how you use your land development regulations to implement that vision and make this a 21st century city that we all know it can be. The initial stages in this process led us to the development of some guiding principles that helped tell us what was important to cover in the plan. And that includes things like having a high quality of design in the built environment. Strong neighborhoods were very important to the citizens. Connected greenway systems, a strong city center, a range of housing choices, utilization of vacant structures and land, and creating that critical mass to support neighborhood businesses. And then having this community be connected. You have a lot of great places here, and we want to find ways to bring those areas together. And so these guiding principles really set us up for a multidimensional plan, something that's more than just saying commercial development should happen here and houses should be built here. It was more of an inclusive vision for what the city could be. To cover that and provide recommendations that will let you have a framework for decision making, we covered 5 elements. The idea that you already have established communities, and there are a lot of characteristics that are really important about those. So we address development by whether it's an adaptive reuse, infill, where it's happening on a lot next to 2 existing homes or businesses, greenfield development, which is, you know, the edge of the city where you don't have a lot of development around it. And then there's also the kind of larger parcel redevelopment within the city. And so we've provided some guidelines to help bring those all together so that they meet that context. The connections and the design of the public spaces is also addressed here. And then the heart of the land use plan are the development types, which strongly relate to your current zoning districts or the neighborhoods that people are familiar with. Those are the development types. And those are supported by building types that describe the individual buildings or uses on individual sites. And then finally, what's really important about this is the city already had a legacy of neighborhood planning. And so a lot of your neighborhoods knew what their vision was, but described it with different vocabulary and different terms. And so in this process, we were able to bring those recommendations together and describe them in a consistent way. And then to kind of carry on, because as we all know, development is never static. There's always change happening. The plan recommends doing a series of neighborhood and area plans that allows each part of the city to have its own vision, to address its own unique set of opportunities and challenges in the way that's best fitting to them. To talk just briefly about the context issue, this is something we really focused on in this plan. Because people value so much the places they live and work here in Columbia, it was really important to make sure that the new things that happen fit in and enhance that environment. So again, we talk about ways that new development can do that. And it may be by right, so it may be already zoned for that, but these are things to consider when reviewing development. The connections in design, we focused on 2 features: the major traffic corridors and roadways, and the gateways into different neighborhoods and the city itself. And we've provided some guidelines and standards for how you can make those areas, you know, the face of Columbia. And so that's going to require public-private partnerships, because these are our areas where we're going to have the highest concentration of businesses and signage. But they're also the places where you deal with the public streetscaping elements. The other major connections that we included in the plan are your greenways and your trail networks. And these are in 2 sections: the urban, which are more in the core and downtown areas. And then you also have recommendations that address the more naturalized greenways and trails to provide guidance on those. And then to the development categories. We have, I think, about 20 plus different categories that describe the characteristics both of the existing neighborhoods, but also of the areas where there's envisioned change and evolution over time. And these development categories are broken into 4 unique sets. The neighborhoods, which are the places where we primarily live, the activity centers and corridors, which are primarily the places where we work, and the special districts, which are kind of those places that they're very unique within the city, and they may have their own function and form. Places like college and university campuses, entertainment districts, and the zoo fall into these special districts. And then the gateways and corridors, which are more the public realm. We talk about the context a lot, and the city of Columbia has evolved and changed over many decades and generations, but there are some consistent form characteristics from the original planned grid that represents the majority of the urban core areas. And then as you got new developments outside the city each decade, you start to develop new characteristics and forms, and that's what we refer to as the urban edge. And so there are consistent themes that repeat themselves in the urban core and urban edge categories. The development types also establish the primary function of development. And that's where I referred to, are these places where we're primarily living, or are they places where we're primarily working? And we refer to those as the neighborhoods or the activity centers and corridors. And then they establish the character, scale, and mix of uses that are appropriate in each of those areas. The character would be, do you have small houses on large lots with big front yards? Do people have driveways in these neighborhoods? Where are the sidewalks located? And then you have the scale, which is how big, how robust are the uses and intensities in these areas. The development types themselves were actually mapped, and this was a process that went through several iterations. It started very early in the process, and we vetted this with the public, and it's been revised on several occasions, both in June and then again in November. And this is the citywide map. In the plan itself, you have very detailed area maps for the different parts of the city. And this is just a simple representation of what's in the plan to help describe the individual development types. It describes the block form, so how do the streets lay out, how compact or spread out are the uses, and kind of how do the buildings and uses relate to one another. And this is described here for the urban core mixed residential type 1, and then the urban edge version is shown here, and as you can see, there's a difference between the way these forms play out. And really the goal behind providing this information is to set up the process for doing the revisions to the land use development code. And these can serve as the standard for the development standards in that effort. With each development type, there is a list of recommended or suitable building types and uses, which is how the individual lots are used. And those are described and illustrated in the plan as well. These are not mapped to allow for flexibility within individual neighborhoods about where different uses are located. So after this plan is reviewed and adopted by the city, the next step would be to kick off the land development rewrite. And that process will start with a series of staff interviews to understand how the current code is working for the city. And then we will also be comparing the recommendations in the plan to your existing regulations to see how they line up and where we might need new regulations to help implement what the vision that came from the public was. Then we will move into the code assessment, which is actually a diagnosis of your existing code. We'll pull out the key issues, analyze the current regulations and the format. Processes also will be included in that. And at this point, we'll help the city determine what the format of your land regulations will be moving forward. And there are a variety of options, but we'll work to do a customized fit for the city. After that point, we will prepare an annotated outline and make sure that everyone involved is comfortable with the content of the regulations before moving forward into actually drafting the standards. We do have a specific step here for the public review and adoption. That will likely take a good amount of time, as we'll want very detailed review. But there will be public review opportunities throughout the earlier steps. And then finally, once the new code is adopted, we would be able to help create an administration manual and get the staff and anyone using the new code up to speed on how to implement and use that in an administrative capacity. And with that, I would like to ask for any questions or comments and anything I can help address.
Any questions before we have public input?
I'll wait till after the public input.
Okay.
I'll wait till
Ms. Nevius? Let's see, you signed up. I think Ms. Nevius might be the only one who signed up to speak on the issue. It may not have signed up. Go ahead. Please, Brian.
Mayor Benjamin, council members, I just came tonight to say thank you to the staff and to the consultant and to you. This was, when you go through a land use plan, often you think, ho-hum, it's going to be on the shelf, just like every other land use plan. But I think that what really excited the public to engage in this was the decision to go forth with codes and rewriting the zoning laws. So bravo. I mean, really, I think it truly engaged the community. And staff, again, I cannot say to you how enjoyable it was to work with them, and the comments that I heard from the community that this was a really wonderful process. Also think it was a fantastic idea that the same consultant did the Richland County Let's Plan, so they really took a look at our entire area. Again, I did not introduce myself. Ryan Nevius. I'm representing Sustainable Midlands. I'm a new board member, changing from my old position, and we're here just to salute this entire process and look forward to working with you on the next portion of it.
Thank you, Ms. Nevius. Anyone else here to speak on this issue? I will say this too, no pun intended, this was a very comprehensive process. I thought staff did a really good job of being as inclusive as possible, utilizing, and our consultants to utilizing every tool available to reach out to folks. And even more so, as you got that feedback, you're very responsive in improving on the plan. And that was very, very well done, very well done. And quite prompt too, I might add too. That was very efficient, very efficient. So any other comments? Ms. Plow and Mr. Davis?
Well, I too want to thank the staff. I didn't have the opportunity, just because of my situation, to participate in the meetings, but I do have the document. And I have taken the opportunity to flip through it. I guess the one thing that I'd ask for further clarity, and I didn't catch it if you did say this, is that when we look at the future land use map, please elaborate about if development comes forward that is not in compliance with our future land use map, how that would be dealt with.
Well, the initial effect of the land use plan will be that it's just an advisory capacity. So if a development project comes to the city that is already approved through existing zoning, the plan would not change that in any way. You could certainly look at the other recommendations in the plan to help maybe influence the design of that development so that it fits its context, but it wouldn't necessarily prohibit or allow uses that are not already zoned for a property. The long-term effect will be that over the next 18 months, as the code is being written, there will be a need to revisit and look at the zoning map, which is the regulatory partner to the land use map. And that will be a heavily publicly vetted process where the recommendations of the plan would be used to determine if there would need to be adjustments to the zoning boundaries. It is most likely that the zoning would reflect closely what is on the ground as existing, and that any future changes or developments that we do not know about at the time of the zone map preparation would have to go through a typical zone change process after the fact.
I guess specifically, kind of what I was trying to ask is if the new zoning ordinance is in place and a rezoning request comes in that obviously is changing the existing zoning, and how will the future land use map be used when you are reviewing a possible change?
In that case, what you would do is you would have the land use plan map and the recommendations in the development types to go by. The land use plan map is not intended to be parcel specific, hard-lined.
Okay.
You know, this should be C2, this should be R1. They are general guidelines. And so those areas that are kind of on the edges there will have to be discretion used in whether or not the proposed development is appropriate there. Some of that can be addressed through additional area planning, but it would just serve as a guide.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. That's
You're very welcome.
Let me, if I may, I'll illustrate with an example that you had recently. A request for a rezoning off of North Main Street to go from residential to industrial. Currently, our land use plan would say it was urban, which gave you very little policy direction when making that decision. At this point in time, it would direct that it would be at least more to the residential. And so when making that decision about whether to go from residential to industrial, you would have had a little bit more policy guidance on that. And that's what you have currently, for instance, and we used the North Columbia plan for that to help provide that policy guidance. And it doesn't shackle you to that, but it is a policy guide.
thank you.
Thank you. Is proper for a motion? Are we? All right. So moved. Second. Discussion, further discussion. Move the previous question, clerk call a roll.
Mr. Badura. Mr. Runyon.
Aye.
Mr. Newman.
Aye.
Ms. Plow.
Aye.
Ms. Devine. Mr. Davis.
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin.
Aye. Really, really good work there, guys. Really good work. Thank you. Now we're going to go ahead and take up items 24 and 25. 24?
Item 24, resolution number R 2015-014, instructing the city manager to communicate city council's objection to any change in the laws of the state of South Carolina that would eliminate the need for a referendum when a political subdivision desires to sell a water and/or wastewater treatment and distribution.
I move passage.
Second.
All right, discussion?
Motion again? What was the motion?
Passage of 24. And I think it's important to note there are no pending bills that that would change that. There were some in the last legislative session. And I think as a matter of state law, I think it refers to water, not sewer. But in any event, just want to make sure we all support that. Discussion, Ms. Devine.
Well, and I didn't know if we wanted to kind of put them both out there and talk and hear public comment, but
That might be a good idea.
yeah, we've had a lot of conversation up here. I think there are areas where most of us agree. There are some nuances, and I'm hoping that we can kind of resolve it to get a majority of council support. I guess where I am on both of these, in concept, I have no problem with either one of these. Where I have a little bit of concern, I guess, is, and it may be helpful for the city manager, for everybody's edification, to go through the history on how we got here, because I know there's been a lot of discussion as to whether or not, how did this RFEI come to play, why, what are we looking for? And I know that consistently we've talked about obtaining ideas for identifying efficiencies within the city system. For some of us, efficiencies mean one thing, and I think for the vast discussion, the efficiencies have led to a discussion as to whether or not selling our water system is on the table. It is not on the table at this point, and I can't speak for anybody other than myself.
I think it's not on the table at all.
Okay, I was gonna say, I can't speak for anybody other than myself, but for me, it is not on the table at all. And so I think that we need to be clear as to what we're trying to gain from this process, and where I have a slight concern, and I think this is not Ms. Plow's intent of either one of these resolutions, but where I have a slight concern is I do want to get the responses so that we can have some people help us identify efficiencies, or at least the ideas for those efficiencies. And I think there is a concern by some people as to if we pass one or both of these, whether or not we shut down the process, which we're only a week away from getting the responses. So as part of our discussions on here, I think that there is a desire to alleviate people's concerns of we're looking at selling the system, and I think we need to affirmatively do that this evening, but I also don't want to shut down the opportunity for us to get some ideas on things that we need to be looking at going forward. So I did want us to have that in the discussion, but after everyone comments, and maybe before we get the public comment, Ms. Wilson, if you could go through the history that you shared with Ms. Smith and others, I think that would be helpful to let everyone know kind of how we got here and that this didn't just appear. Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
I want to say that I understand, and I think we all have received feedback about what's out there, what's on the street regarding the council's positions and strategies towards the selling of the system. I want to say that that has not been a discussion amongst council members. No, don't know how that got out there, but we have not collectively sat down and say that we need to consider selling the system. That's number one. Number two, what we're doing, from my perspective, and what I'd like us to see is, because of the mandates that we have, and because of what we know that has to be done with the system, and what I understand, and I think what we all intended, was to get the best thinking of the people in the system in that business that knows what we as a municipality has to do in order to make our system more efficient. I agree with my colleague, efficiency probably does mean different things to different people, but the bottom line is that we would have, as a result of doing our homework, depending on the staff and their expertise, to find out the best way to approach that so that we can one, meet our mandates, and in the long term, have an efficient system that meets the requirements of the federal folks as well as the local taxpayers. And I have not been an advocate. I am not an advocate, and I don't foresee any time in the future where I will be an advocate for selling the system. And I also agree that we need to continue the process that will help us ensure that we have one of the best systems in this region like we've always had.
Thank you, Ms. Plow.
I wanted to sort of put this in perspective that I had a community meeting, I co-sponsored it with Councilman Badura, packed crowd, very specific and direct in their concerns, and water and sewer privatization was one of them, but it's one we spent a good deal of time on that night. It was suggested at that meeting that we were really not interested in privatization. What we were interested in were efficiencies. So as a result of that, I proposed these two resolutions in keeping with what was said at the meeting. But there is a sentence that I would like to read to everyone that is in the RFEI, whatever. I get it confused because I'm used to requests for proposals, and this is not that. But it's just one sentence. The RFEI is issued by the city solely for the purpose of gathering information regarding interested parties, perspectives, and public-private partnership opportunities and related matters for privatizing water and sewer. I felt like we needed to clarify what we were really trying to do, since that language was very clear, to me at least. And so I have crafted, with the help of city staff, both of these resolutions, one dealing with pending legislation, another one trying to clarify that we are not interested in privatization. And I think you have to broadly, and I could go through here and pick out, what privatization means, but I think, you have to look at it in terms of, are you willing to sell it? Are you willing to lease it? Are you willing to have a service agreement that basically wraps around the whole system? And then when we get to the point that we're talking about the second resolution that I'm referring to now, I put refinance in there. It was broad. I asked the staff to help me clarify it because I never intended in the crafting of this for it to prohibit the city of Columbia or lessen the city's interest in having to refinance certain aspects of our system for our purposes, for public purposes, the city to do the refinancing. That language was included because there are instances, as I have learned in the last week or so, where private companies will buy your debt. And when they buy your debt, they have control. And so that's the reason that I tried to craft it the way I did on the refinancing, and I will put this when we get to that motion, to clarify what we're really trying to do on the refinancing is to say nothing in this resolution shall be construed to prohibit or limit the future ability of the city to issue bonds for refinancing purposes. The city to issue bonds for refinancing purposes. So I say all that. I think it's important to have the backdrop of what came out at the meeting. I've got to say one other thing, and real honest, and it kind of struck me to my heart. But this was a packed crowd. They looked at Councilman Medora and myself, the city manager, city attorney, police chief, and many of you are in this room, and you know what was said. We do not trust you. And I'm telling you, when I read this and try to clarify something, you know, I ask my colleagues to please help. I would like language that would work for all of us. I would like us to not have a split vote on either one of these resolutions. But if we really are interested in privatization, then this is not your resolution that you want to vote for. I'll say that to my colleagues. This is clearly not what you want to vote for.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Plow. Now you had a question of the city manager.
Yeah, if she could just go over the history, just so everybody kind of has the same thing, and then we hear from the public.
I would say this too, because obviously staff's been working on this for the 8
know,
months or more. I mean, maybe longer.
Years.
A year.
I mean,
a year.
I do think that
A year.
certainly.
Several presentations at City Council, making it clear that we would be issuing a request for expressions of interest over the last several months. So this is not something new or even unique in that manner. Across this country, cities of all sizes are looking at public-private partnerships, not just in terms of water and sewer, but in transportation. That's actually being encouraged by the administration, the Obama administration, in P3s and parking, in solid waste, in recycling, even in delivering different social services through the use of social impact bonds. This is nothing new, and this process has not been secret. I will say that I can understand some of the concerns, maybe not all of them, expressed in last week's meeting. Certainly because we have a lot of work to do in getting our system to where we want it to be. We have been actively and aggressively, some of us, working to make sure we make those investments. We were planning to spend $500 million, and as a result of our negotiations with the EPA, we'll be spending $750 million to upgrade our system, hopefully more than that. Looking at spending $750 million and then not also being willing to go into, $750 million, and knowing the significant corresponding rate increases that come as a result of that, and not go through a due diligence process of asking the questions, what can we do to reduce those expenditures? I think that's good due diligence. I think that's the way that we ought to conduct business. We have to ask the questions to work to keep our rate increases down. If you don't ask the questions, and we're just going to go ahead and pass those issues on to our constituents and our ratepayers, I think it's unfair. I'll also say that our staff has not only been putting this process together for the last year or so, and again, sharing this with us every step of the way, at least 2 or 3 times on public meeting agenda and presented to council on this issue. Staff has also been working aggressively to reduce transfers from the water and sewer system every single year, and now it's at an all-time low, maybe 2.7% of the actual budget, going in the right direction as well. Staff's been doing a good job, and staff's been doing exactly as they've been asked to do. I think this is the right way to go. I think if in fact we did not do an RFP. We did not do a bid. We asked people for their ideas. We asked them to express their interests, and all this comes right back to council, and we have a chance to discuss it. Obviously, state law is pretty clear on disposing of a water system, and we support that. And I don't think anyone up here would support not having a referendum if that were, in fact, the case. I will say this, though. A lot of the concerns expressed that have been expressed directly to me over the last week or so have been based on some very intentional misinformation that's been spread. And I hope and pray that as we discuss this, we can continue to do it with the facts that have been shared by council. Some great facts that we've been given by some of our constituents. Got this Corporate Accountability International report from Ryan Nevius and Sustainable Midlands. I think all of us got copies of it today. I received this last year, and not only, and this is a report, probably the most critical report of privatization or even public-private partnerships of water and sewer systems. I received this last year, immediately came and gave it to staff. I asked our staff to engage with the folks at Corporate Accountability International because we needed to make sure we had all the answers, not just those who might support privatization or public-private partnerships, but those who were incredibly critical of it. Our staff engaged them. They've talked to the folks at Corporate Accountability International to come here and conduct a public workshop prior to us being able to evaluate the possible proposals that we might get. So this is meant to be a process in which we're trying to get as much information as possible to make an educated decision about the best way how to move forward. This is meant to be as open and inclusive a process as possible, and we look forward to your engagement. We look forward to sharing all the facts that we receive with everyone who's in this room. But it's important that we have the information. We're not talking about an inconsequential sum of money. We're talking about a lot of money, and that money, for all practical purposes, there's no help coming from the federal government. There's no money coming from the state government. That money is going to come from our taxpayers and our ratepayers' pockets. And if we're not judicious in how we handle this and ask all the questions in an exhaustive manner, then I don't think we're doing our jobs. We are in the 11th hour on this RFEI that is currently out. We will have proposals back. When are they coming back, Jeff? Teresa, is it next week?
23rd. The 23rd of February.
Yeah. So next week. And I just think it's important that we continue to listen. We continue to listen to those who are critical. We continue to engage many of you in this room who have a great deal of valuable experience in this space, and we'll discuss this together. We'll dialogue about this together, and we'll make good decisions together. I mean, I think that's the way we do things. That's the way we need to aspire to do things. That's the way we continue to do things. And I mean, I may have answered most of what Ms. Devine asked you to say, but do some of the very basic blocking and tackling as to when we, of course, had these discussions and when the presentations were made to council in public session and the like, just so folks know this has not been some secretive process. I've heard a number of different things that just are not true.
Well, I would venture to say, Mayor Benjamin and council, that, I typically speak with you all with candor and constituents and citizens as well. And quite frankly, from the day that I applied to be city manager, this council has been talking about the necessity for finding internal efficiencies in our water and sewer system. It is our greatest asset. When I interviewed with you for this job, we spent a significant amount of time talking about our asset, and I remember that. And as we're having these discussions now, I don't think I took it lightly then, and I certainly don't take it lightly now. So yes, I think this discussion has evolved. I think it dates back as far as 2013. And as the conversations have continued, the discussions have been not about privatizing or selling the system or refinancing, as those are the terms that are being utilized. It's been about efficiencies, and I would, capture the spirit of these discussions with council and the directions to staff as information gathering at this point, and the way that we were directed to comprehensively gather the information was to put out the request for expressions of interest, or the RFEI, which was meant to include in a comprehensive manner, acknowledging that, of course, there are private entities out there whose response would be, in their interpretation of how they respond on finding efficiencies, may be privatized or concessionaire, those type things. But in addition to that, we also incorporated the need for finding efficiencies like biosolids processing, automated meter reading. All of these things are things that we've discussed with council in work sessions at various periods of time. Most recently, it was July 15th when it was on the work session agenda, and I know from my discussions with the community members at the recent meeting that Ms. Plow and Mr. Bedora had, there was a discussion about the timing of that. If at a work session, community members are able to come during the day for a discussion like that. I mean, my response to them was typically a work session discussion is for the type of things that we had today when we are giving council updates, briefings on matters related to budget or things such as this. And so, of course, we were having discussions on information gathering, updates on water and sewer items on July 15th as well, where it was listed on the presentation that we were given about public-private partnerships and trying to seek direction from council on if indeed you wanted us to move forward with issuing the RFBI. That would be the most recent time where it was listed on the agenda. Again, on January 27th, we had a discussion with council about the water and sewer system and these issues. We've continued to have discussions with council, and we will continue to for the next several work sessions because, as I explained today in our work session, we are in the midst of budget. We are trying to bring a lot of information to council leading up to some very tough decisions that this council has to make in regards to the system. So I anticipate we will have discussions on February 17th. We will have discussions on March the 3rd, and they will continue in this fashion for a while. But never at any point in time has there been an item to sell or privatize the management of the city's water or sewer system, which we did also release this as an effort to bring some clarity to what we had been asked to do in a news release back on February 3rd or 4th. And the news release includes any effort to sell or privatize management of the city's water or sewer systems would carry significant federal and state requirements and would have to be initiated by the city's policymakers. No such action has occurred. It would also have to make sense for the city, its residents, its businesses, its customers, and its stakeholders. Public input and transparency would be critical if such a proposal were ever to move forward. And I just read that again to reiterate that if, in fact, there had been that direction of by this council to me, yes, certainly we would have had that item on a very public evening meeting agenda. But to this point, the direction of the discussion has been more about the information gathering. So as I said, I gave those dates that I can recall most recently where we've had some of those discussions and work sessions. In addition to that, we've had conference calls with the group that the mayor mentioned, the Corporate Accountability International. We've talked with them about coming to Columbia to work on a best practices for evaluating proposals that we're anticipating receiving in a workshop that could be a public type workshop. Our staff has reached out to other areas, our counterparts in other municipalities who have gone through similar discussions like Fort Worth, Atlanta, Baltimore. So again, I just would close, and I hope I've answered Ms. Devine's question, but I did share with the community members who had asked me the following. I believe in finding efficiencies in our system and making it the best it can be. We are doing that internally and will follow through with all requirements of the consent decree. If there are other resources or professionals in the field, public or private, who can bring assistance or guidance, I think it is in our best interest to review and learn on our own terms. Our system is one of our greatest assets, and the staff and I take it very seriously. And I mean, I really am happy to answer any specific questions about the drafting of the RFEI or give information and pull presentations, which I've done for some members of the community. But I guess the tenor of the discussion is that it has been an information gathering exercise as far as the staff is concerned.
and I'm sorry, I know we tried, we knew all that, and so I wasn't trying to be rude to you, but part of what the mayor and I were discussing, because as said before, you know, I think that we hear the concerns of the community, and I think that certainly it's regrettable that people feel like they can't trust this council to move forward, and so that is certainly something that we want to take heed of and acknowledge, but we also want to make sure that this process, the citizens get the best out of this process. So we were trying to, as Ms. Plow said, and I think this has always been her intention, is to put something on the table that alleviates concerns that she heard last Thursday, as well as all of us have been hearing via email and phone calls, but allow us to still look at the process. And so the mayor and I have been trying to maybe come up with language to tweak the resolution. And, you know, it's difficult, I think, sometimes when you put things in writing because, number one, we're rushing to put something in writing to put in front of council to vote on tonight when there's lots of other things that need to be considered. And so want to hear from the community if people really want to say something. But the other thing I would put forward to this council to consider is allowing, I think the big part about the trust factor is the perception of maybe not having full transparency or people not knowing what's going on. And the fact that we're a week away from the responses coming in, maybe one solution is allowing, along with our staff, other folks, to serve, citizens to serve on the review committee that can look at the ideas and say, this is a good idea, this should be further explored. And then, of course, there will still be a full public discussion about anything that we consider, but then that way people have an idea. And I don't know if I haven't discussed this with these people yet, so I don't throw things out, but we're thinking maybe Ms. Nevius and Mr. Stangler, if you all would be willing to serve as citizen members on a review committee to look at these responses as they come in, so at least we don't stop this process, because I think everybody knows how important it is for us to look at and you know, look at these, and that's not exclusive. There might be some other things. I know there are other people in the audience who may have some expertise, but we were trying to think of people who have expertise. But to allow this process so we can look at these efficiencies, but then there are citizens who are at the table who understand and can attest to the fact that we're not going down the road of privatization. So I just put that out there for council to consider before we start pushing resolutions and of course hear from the citizens. But I think that might be a way to keep this ball rolling without passing something that we haven't fully been able to agree on yet.
Would you be so inclined, Ryan? Would you be inclined to possibly serve? Yeah.
Bill, would you?
Let's see. Oh, he's back there. Okay. I didn't
What
see
about,
that there.
and
Okay.
maybe Ms. Sanders?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so it's not about having a closed process. It's about having an inclusive process, but being able to ask the right questions. I mean, and I think the tough questions have to be asked by those who are naturally not necessarily predisposed to even the concept in and of itself. So, but anyway, I think that's on the table for council's consideration. I think it's also a very good idea. We have a number of citizens who've asked to speak. If council doesn't have anything else to say, well, maybe we'll go ahead and have a
Just one other thing.
citizen input. Go ahead, please, Mr.
Yeah,
Davis.
we talked about 2, maybe 3 persons so far. I'd like to reserve the right to also select someone. I don't think we're going to formulate it tonight, so we've got a day or 2 to.
All right, we'll spend
Come up with some
some time. Mr. Newman, then we'll go to public comment.
No, he just wanted to.
I'm sorry, Mr. Badura has his hand up too. Mr. Newman, Mr. Badura, and then we'll go to public comment.
Mayor, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I love the word public-private partnership. We hear that a lot lately. You're right. Everywhere you go, you hear that a lot. I guess my big question or my concern, as in the $750 million the EPA imposed on us to rebuild the infrastructure or invest back in infrastructure. If we do contract or have an agreement with somebody as the RFEI, even though the RFEI said sell, who will be responsible for that? Is it back on the citizens of Columbia also, or the city of Columbia itself, or would it be something that we need to look into and make part of the contract or part of the negotiation or part of the discussion? I think,
Well, we've already paid our fine to the EPA.
Yeah, it's,
No,
it's
no,
important. It's
but-
important. It's important to note because it's one of Mr. Badura's emails stated we had a $750 million fine. It was a $500,000 fine, but the obligation, the city had already committed to spending over $500,000 in improving the system. In the negotiated agreement with the EPA, we agreed to spend $750 million. And I hope and pray that we'll actually spend more than that. And we'll get into, John, I sent a note to one of your colleagues earlier today to talk about the system and the fact that we're talking about improving the system for a long time, and particularly the way in which our storm drainage system handles wet weather events. So, but significant improvements are being made by our employees every single day. The system is not dilapidated, as the state newspaper likes to say all the time. But in any event, the $750 million worth of improvements, yes, will be borne by ratepayers, and we're going to have to figure out how exactly that's done, and that would be the case under the situation as it exists today, tomorrow, under any public-private agreement or what have you. Just trying to answer your question. All right, Mr. Newman, and then Ms. Plow, and then maybe we'll get to citizens.
And again, I'll be brief. I thought it was important to, since everyone has stated their position, that I want everyone to be clear that I have absolutely no interest in selling our water system either. I'll tell you from, and I mentioned this to my colleagues earlier, on a weekly basis, we hear from a number of constituents. We hear from a number of folks that may be outside the city of Columbia that have ideas or suggestions as to how the city needs to be operated. We also hear from vendors. And I mentioned to my colleague in 2010 when I was first elected, I think it might have been that next week that I received an email from someone interested in buying our water and sewer system. I believe it is a major asset to all of us at the city of Columbia. So I had no interest in engaging in any sort of conversations with them then. I hear from people at our municipal association conferences that are interested in buying or operating our water and sewer system. And I've expressed my position to them as well. So yet again, I've had to respond to a number of calls, emails, and text messages today, from my neighborhood leaders saying to not sell our water and sewer system. And I've reminded them that that's not something that's up for discussion today. But yet and still, there, of course, we've got outside experts that have information for us that could possibly benefit the city of Columbia. And I, like Councilwoman Devine, want to find some sort of remedy to state our position so everyone's comfortable and clear that we are not trying to sell this system, but yet gives our staff the opportunity to improve our system so that taxpayers are not dramatically impacted on a regular basis or annual basis, having to deal with drastically increased water and sewer rates just to pay for issues that may have occurred in the past. So again, I'm hopeful that we'll get some sort of remedy and look forward to hearing from everyone. But I just felt it important to note my position on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Ms. Plow, did you have another word before we go to citizens?
Yeah, and I'll be brief.
Yes, ma'am.
Despite the document that we put out for the private sector to respond to that says our sole purpose is for privatizing the water and sewer, this council doesn't appear, from the comments I've heard thus far, interested in privatizing. And so I asked almost a rhetorical question to my colleagues, is if we truly are trying to send a message that we're not interested, then what is the problem with the resolution that's before you? if there is something that needs to be tweaked about it, because what it addresses efficiencies, if that's what we're really about, and it talks about that we are basically not wanting to give up control, not wanting to privatize, despite this document that says that's the sole purpose. So, again, I'm just trying to understand. I don't want to see us, get in this tit for tat or debate. I want to be very civil about it. I'm just really struggling with trying to understand what is it that's so offensive in the resolution that I put before this council.
Ms. Bly, I'd say. Thank those 4 people. The important thing to note here, Ms. Ply, is not that anything's offensive, because it's not. Nothing's offensive. Nothing's offensive. What's important to note here is that I remember the conversations from our city manager interviews in which we talked about this very specific issue. And we've talked about it several times over the course of the last few years. We expressed, and you obviously were out, so I understand that in July you were not at the meeting. Every other member of council was, however, at the meeting in which we made it clear that we would be issuing an RFEI, and we heard no howls of protests. Our staff has spent an incredible number of hours on this. They actually have an incredible number of hours on this. And you go through a very thoughtful process over a significant number of months and years, and then a week before you get responses back from potential partners, then you throw out the baby with the bathwater on a resolution that 2 resolutions that were given a few days before our council meeting. I just don't think that's the way that we should do business, and it has no. I understand your intent, but I don't think there are any negative or nefarious intents of anyone at the table. I think we all have those concerns. Let's let the process run its course. Let's make sure that we engage in this in a very transparent manner, that we have citizens, including those who are not even supportive of the concept that we're talking about, involved in the process. And let's continue to talk about it. Let's continue to dialogue about it. I just think it's so important that we need to urge patience, that we need to urge trust. We include critics and skeptics in the process, but you don't start a process literally. I guess the first time we formally said we were going to be doing this was in July, and we've talked about it several times since then. And then a week before we received proposals back, we submarined the process. That's not the way you do business, and that's just my concern. That's my concern.
Can I just briefly respond? I'm sorry, I won't keep doing this, but I'm really concerned that if this council is not interested in privatization, then it's not fair to the companies that are out there putting these proposals together. I mean, clearly, if I read this, I would be, the sole purpose is privatization. I'd be going after privatization. So, again, I think we are doing the individuals that are finalizing their proposals a favor if indeed this council is not interested in doing that. It's not right to the business sector, just like, there's concerns about how we're communicating with the public. We're trying to clarify the public, but how do we clarify that with the people that are submitting proposals or responding to this? The only way to do it is to have some vote of this council, and that's really, again, what I was trying to do. If it's a timing issue, it seems like it's appropriate because that's what you want to do, is you want to help clarify for those people that are spending a lot of time, money, and energy in putting their information together.
council's interested in getting answers to questions and getting ideas presented. Ms.
Can
Devine?
I just ask a question, and this may be for Ms. Wilson or Ms. Gentry or whoever is taking questions, but I guess to answer the point that Ms. Plow has brought up, I wonder have you gotten any concerns for any prospective responders that's the sole thing? And I will say that I even got an email that I ended up forwarding to you all from somebody I think who was interested in responding, who plans to respond, and their solution was not privatization. So I would think that most people understand that in the RFP or RFI, whatever, in its totality, that all options were going to be considered. But certainly if that one sentence is an impediment to us getting a full evaluation and ideas, then I can understand there needs to be some clarifying language. Have you all received questions on it and other things?
I have not personally received any questions from those who may have been concerned that they couldn't respond if they were trying to respond with efficiencies that had nothing to do with privatizing or concessionaire arrangements. But again, I'm looking at Mr. Palin because he oversees the staff that would literally be receiving on the responses coming in from like a procurement standpoint. But no, ma'am, I mean, I don't think so. I think the staff would have probably brought that to my attention if we were having that issue. Ms. Gentry is not here, but I just haven't gotten any indication either way. I mean, I think it's just that we extended it because we felt like, we were going to give it more time. But.
And I just would say, Ms. Plow, and I'm not sure if all of us received this email, we probably did, or maybe I got it because of the Environment Infrastructure Committee, but I got an email from someone, and it was interesting because I didn't know that the RFEI was on the street yet at that point. So I might have gotten the person in trouble because they had sent an email, but the response was actually not, it was giving ideas, and I guess that's why I feel so strongly that I want the ideas, because the response was giving ideas. Have you all looked at this? Have you all considered that? There are these other public entities like the people who produce this report that can tell you the pros and cons. And so I think that there are a lot of people who are not considering privatization at all that are anxious to give us their ideas and potentially work with us. So, I mean, I don't want to shut that out, and I understand your concern, and I just figure how do we do that and make sure we get those responses?
Can we go ahead and
Let's go ahead and hear from the folks, but let me I'm going to shut down by saying, I don't respond to anybody that's sending me emails about this. I am going to depend on staff because I think staff clearly understands the intent of council. If there's a midpoint here between Ms. Plow's intent for clarification and where we know that we are in terms of what our motives are, we can do that tonight, either after. I would suggest that we continue to think about this after we hear from the public. Then we can come up with a conclusion. I got a mouthful last night from the Greenview community. Everybody knows about the Greenview community. They are self-thinkers, and I clearly understand their message to me.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to move ahead with public comment. Mr. Duval, you're up first. After Mr. Duval, Andy Yasinsak, is that right? Yasinsak? And after Mr. Yasinsak, Ms. Sanders, Ms. Virginia Sanders is up to speak, and then Ms. Bull. And I'd only ask everyone, Madam Clerk, the rules, follow the rules.
You have 3 minutes. Once you're down to 30 seconds, the yellow light will come on, the first beep.
That's all you got, Howard. Many of you may not know that many, many moons ago, Howard Duval was my client. 20 years ago, Howard? Probably.
It was about that.
About 20 years ago.
Right. Long time.
Yeah. Back then, he could talk a long time. I could bill him for it. I can't do that anymore. So, but go ahead, Howard, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Now, I was just saying, Howard, and based on our lengthy discussion, if you have anybody, if they have solutions on how do we get to where we say we want to try and get, please offer that.
sure. Mr. Mayor, Mayor Benjamin and members of council, I'm Howard Duvall. I live at 4103 McGregor Drive in Columbia. I'm here to ask you to vote for the 2 resolutions concerning the possible sale of water and sewer utilities. Approving these resolutions will indicate to a skeptical public that this council has no intention of privatizing our most valuable assets. Last week, I received this special report in the mail. Water is the new oil. It's all about private companies all around the world buying up water resources and water utilities. The several foreign companies have mega companies that are financing the legislative assault in many states, not just South Carolina, but in other states, and know that they can make big bucks if they have a monopoly on the service of our most vital resource, our water. It has been said that the request for expression of interest was developed by the staff, and the intent of the council was to allow private companies to explain how they could find efficiencies in the operation of our utilities. These mega companies would love to get lucrative consulting contracts to get their foot in the door. Before this council or the staff pays thousands for consultants, I would suggest they look at the well-run public utilities we have right here in South Carolina. The city of Rock Hill has a great system. Each year, they do a comparison of rate studies for 28 to 30 of the comparable cities around the state and in North Carolina, and you will be pleased to know that the city of Columbia ranks very well in their rate studies. You have some capacity to take care of $750 million if you had to do that. Other systems that I would recommend you look at would be the Greenville Water System, which is a large one, Charleston CPW, Grand Strand Water and Sewer, and several nearby systems that would be more than happy to share the good, the bad, and the ugly with the city of Columbia. The director of New Jersey Sierra Club recently said, "Privatization is one of the single biggest threats to clean water and public health. Privatization often leads to higher rates for services and worsened water quality. Studies have shown that when public service are privatized, corporate profits replace meeting the needs of consumers and the environment. Ratepayers and taxpayers have spent billions of dollars to build these water systems. Now water companies are going to take over our public water supply for profit rather than work for the public they are supposed to serve. We will end up seeing higher costs for services, problem at facilities, and taxpayers paying the bill." Now, Mr. Mayor, you have talked to your council members about this is not the way we do things. We're open and transparent. Mr. Mayor, I would like to tell you that there is no mention of selling or privatizing the water company in any of the minutes of the meetings that you have talked about. The meeting on July the 15th had 2 slides in it. One of them says, upcoming RFEIs, and it talks about biosolids that the city manager mentioned a minute ago. And then it had others coming soon. A following ad said, future goals and initiatives, public-private partnerships, P3. There is no mention in an agenda, in the minutes of the meeting, or any other place that you intend to privatize this system. Now, if you don't have that as your intent, you've got a very simple resolution that can be tweaked if you want to make it a little bit more exclusive, but take it off the table right now. Don't fool the companies or fool the public by saying you're going to disregard this resolution and go ahead and get these things in for efficiencies. There are plenty of ways to get efficiencies.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you.
Madam City Manager, you wanted to say something?
Well, I was just saying it wasn't listed that way because we were never, it wouldn't have been listed that way. I mean, we've never had a discussion, as I've said in my opening comments, I mean, that would have to be a very specific directive of this council to staff, which never occurred And it would be on a very public agenda with public hearings, et cetera. So it was
Thank you.
never on the agenda because
Sure.
we were never directed to do
Thank you.
that.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Yasinsak? And we got your letter today as well, so thank you.
My name's Andy Yasinsak. I'm an environmental engineer. I was involved in regulating and designing potable water and wastewater facilities for 39 years till I retired about 5, 6 years ago. I live at 114 Creek Vista Way in Columbia. I'm speaking in part in behalf of the John Bachman group of the Sierra Club, the local group of the Sierra Club. We looked at newspaper information about the possible sale of the city, of which I understand your concerns of how we came to that conclusion, but anyhow, we believe that it's an unqualified bad idea to sell these facilities. Ownership and operation of sanitary sewer should definitely be carried out by the city for the following reasons. It is the benefit of the public to protect health by having a sound sanitary sewer system. Making a profit would be the goal of any private system. Now, what you'd have to do is try to tack contract requirements onto the city, the private company, to try to make them fit a goal which is not theirs to protect public health. Another significant matter is that the serving everyone appropriate is the criterion the city must use in deciding how to operate the system. In contrast, it would be in the interest of a private operator to serve only those who make the operation more profitable. Clearly, this criterion would often conflict. Third, the sewer system and the treatment system are assets of the people through the city government. It's unbelievable that a private entity is going to pay the people the full value of the system, particularly as it would be very difficult. How much is the city sewer system worth? The treatment system might be a little bit easier, but how much is it worth even to provide all of the service that the sewer does provide? Fourth, it's often necessary for an appropriate sewer system to acquire mainly small pieces of property through condemnation. You did that tonight. You bought some property for your 30-inch sewer force main. This should clearly not be put in the hands of a private entity. And even making the decision what to purchase when the city would actually do the condemnation, if you privatize, is something that should clearly not be done. With the city carrying out the decision-making and condemnation, it's subject to a complete process which includes all the citizens of the city, and only then. Okay, a rather painful comment here, I'm afraid. The city has funneled away hundreds of millions of dollars in sewer fees into other activities in past decades. To ask a private operator now to find a way to put the extra money beyond present operating costs of a sewer system into this operation is completely unrealistic. This consideration would further greatly complicate all of the above points I made. The city is definitely in a difficult position, and it should keep the responsibility to carry this out and complete what needs to be done to get back to the whole.
Thank you, Mr. Yasinsak.
So these, if I could, just a second, I'm sorry. These I've written down, and you have these. The city has an obligation, newspaper talks about $750 million over the next 10 years. Until I see proposals and actually tax or rate increases that will lead you to have the money to accomplish this, I'm going to be always suspicious that you're looking for other ways to do it than just paying for what needs to be done.
Thank you.
All right,
Mr.
thanks
Yasinsak.
very much.
Thank you very much. After Ms. Sanders, we have
Yeah.
Ms. Bull, Dr. Hammock, Elaine Cooper.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. My name is Virginia Sanders. I live at 7049 Glengarry Drive in the city of Columbia. I was really taken aback when I heard that the city was even considering or even looking into the privatization of our water system. Our water system, water is something that was provided by our maker. Water, and I put water and air in the same category. To me, for you to even consider privatizing water is a sin. I began calling my friends and family members all across the United States, from California to Maine, who I know lived in places that had water that had been privatized. And out of the 10 people I called, only one person was pleased with the water in their privatized city. That's because she has a $10,000 Culligan water purification system in her house. I can't afford a $10,000 water purification system for my house, and neither can most people in Columbia. You would put our mind at ease. I would be able to sleep better. I will not have to stay on the telephone and the email from now until we settle this problem. If we would just pass the resolution, take privatization off the table, and myself and a lot of other people in Columbia would really appreciate that. That would be the straightforward way of doing business. And we wouldn't have to worry or wonder what's going to happen down the road. If you don't do that, I'm going to be spending the next few weeks on the bus riding, handing out flyers, in the grocery store handing out flyers against the privatization. So make my life a little easier. Go ahead and pass the resolution. Get it off the table, because I'm getting too old and my feet hurt too bad to go through this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, Ms. Bull.
So short. I thank all of you all for being here, Mayor, and everybody else, please. My name is Doretha Bull. My family has been in Columbia since 1841, before slavery ended. And I own the same property. The thing about it, Columbia's made a lot of changes, but it's never made a mistake like you're considering or even thinking of. Privatization should have never been in your mind from day one. I am so grateful to, however, I don't know how the information got out, because you said you didn't put it out there, but whomever put it out did a favor to the citizens, because we felt like somebody's trying to slip a bad one through the mill. And I still feel that way. If there's a resolution on the table to take this off, the privatization policy or program or whatever you want to initiate, you should do it now. The thing about it is that privatization has been a problem wherever it has gone. You can look at all of the literature. Atlanta has spent the last 5 years trying to get rid of a company that took on their privatization. It's in the city of Buckhead down there. And they had problems not only with poor water quality, they didn't have water when the firemen came to put out fires. It also caused the spread of some of the problems with people's illnesses and stuff. The thing about it, even in Europe, they are fighting, trying to get rid of privatization, because these companies want money. Nobody's going to give you a study without having put out money. And they're not going to do it for free. And if you take in their studies, you're going to take their contracts. The other thing about it is this. If I'm a company and I want your business, because this is the new world thing here. We're always talking about third world countries and what's happening for the future. These companies, the last bastion of making money is privatization of water. If they can get in the door, They will tell you, I can do this for maybe 800 million. I can take care of everything for the rest of the time. But as soon as they get in, they know they can't. They run into problems that you don't even know you have until you start working with them, and then they want more and more money. Then when you go back to tell them about how and why they can't get it, and you want to dissolve the contract, you got legal problems. We as a people need our water. It's very important. But we can't afford to pay these companies to come do it. I did some math. I did the $750 million and divided by your 345,000 customers. It came out to $16 a year on my water bill, $16 a month. I would rather pay you $16 a month than to give it to some company who's going to, first of all, make people who are working for the city now in that area unemployed. Number two, the money that they're going to get, it's not going to be spent in this country. It's not going to be spent in this city. It's going to be spent other places. So we're taking money out of our own revenue system. And we need to be aware of this kind of stuff. Plus, they have the ability, once they get in, to sell your good water overseas. Your water just gone. So you have to look at all of these things before you start talking to private people. I will tell you right now, they'll do anything to get your contract.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. After Dr. Hammock, we have Elaine Cooper, then Lieutenant Colonel Tim Pearson, and then Mr. Kevin Gray.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Marjorie Hammock. I'm co-chair of the Progressive Network. I am going to, in the interest of time, yield to the comments that you've heard from the prior folks. I think they've said it all. You don't need another word in order to make a good judgment about what this city can do for its citizens. Privatization is not the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hammock.
Hello, I'm Elaine Cooper. I think you all know me, but I live at 3105 Dallas in the city of Columbia. So I made it back from my appointment at MUSC in Charleston just in time to hear all of your comments. I'm so glad you're giving the public some precious time to talk. So once again, the city of Columbia has drawn attention to the New York Times and Huffington Post, and they sent me this interesting article from the World Bank. 10 reasons to oppose water privatization. I can elaborate on some, but I'll send this document to each and every one of you. Privatization leads to rate increases. Corporations have utilized rate hikes to maximize profits, and it goes on. Privatization undermines water quality because corporate profits are driven by the profits rather than the public good. Privatization usually results in the compromising of environmental standards. Companies are accountable to shareholders, not consumers. That's a pretty good point. And privatization fosters corruption. Privatization reduces local control and public rights. Just thought I'd let that sink in. Private financing costs more than public financing. This is kind of a good point. There's a false perception that when water services are privatized, the financial burden will shift from the public to the private sector, which will save taxpayer money by assuming the cost of repairing, upgrading, and maintaining infrastructure. In reality, taxpayers simply wind up paying more for these projects. Privatization leads to job losses. Privatization is difficult to reverse. Privatization can leave the poor with no access to clean water. Privatization would open the door to bulk water exports. Finally, the World Bank sent this through New York Times and Huffington Post, which are tweeting this out tonight, that the World Bank has predicted by 2025 that 2/3 of the world's population will run short of fresh drinking water. I'll leave you with that thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
I hope you pass this resolution tonight. Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. After Colonel Pearson, we have Kevin Gray, Kit Smith, and then Leslie Hayes.
My name is Tim Pearson, and if we're looking for efficiency, and we think privatization will lead to efficiency, I would suggest to you that we privatize our state government. I don't know if council solicited these bids, but I do know that if you privatize the system, corporations work for their shareholders, not for the residents of this city. I'm also concerned about whether or not we are telling our present employees and administrators in the city that they are too damn incompetent to run the system. I'm also concerned about whether or not they will be able to live off their unemployment when they are replaced by our right-to-work laws and low wages that a corporation will bring in order to make a profit. I'm also concerned about the expansion of our city. Who's going to be responsible for the infrastructure when we decide to expand properties in Columbia? And I also concerned that if we really want true transparency, we can simply do it by passing the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Believe it, Mr. Mayor, Council, I hope you're all doing well.
Hey, Kevin, good to see you.
You know, every time I think about the idea of water and having to pay a water bill, I always think about Dr. King and the idea of having to pay a water bill in a world that's 2/3 water. And now we're talking about privatization. Whether or not it's on the table, I associate with everything that's been said before me. I think it's a bad idea. I think we ought to consider the workers that might be displaced, what they'll have to go through. When I came to Columbia in 1979, 1980 to work with Governor Dick Riley, I worked for I.D. Quincy Newman at the Division of Rural Improvement, doing a survey around this state of the 100 most distressed communities that didn't have water and sewer. And now we're talking about a proposal that if it turns it over to a private company and a corporation who's responsible to its shareholders, a lot of those people that I identified when I came to this city 25, 30 years ago are going to be left out once again. I think this is the beginning, because if this council moves forward on privatizing water, and anyway, this is the beginning, because water is basic. It's as basic as air. And people will fight to protect the system that their forefathers and foremothers built, and many of their fathers and mothers worked for and pay taxes on. This would be the beginning of a fight. And a lot of useless money in a referendum and dividing this city and this community up. So I urge you to end this idea of moving toward privatization in any kind of way and support these resolutions. Thank you.
Thank you. After Ms. Smith, we have Leslie Hayes, and then it looks like Willie Mitten. No, he was a separate issue. Leslie Hayes, then Pamela Greenlaw, and those are the last two people signed up. If you did not have a chance to sign up, I'll pass it around one more time. All right, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm Kit Smith at 120 Edisto Avenue in the city of Columbia. I think there's been a lot of confusion because we keep hearing those members of the public who are concerned and tuned into this issue from individual members of council. We are not considering privatization. We hear that at public meetings, in individual conversations, and even in emails. We are not considering privatization. Yesterday, the city issued a press release that says we expect to receive proposals to sell or lease or privatize the city water system. That was released yesterday.
Who?
I do, I have it with me. It was posted under headlines or front page, and the exact sentence is, although the city anticipates receiving some RFEI proposals reflective of selling or privatizing operations, not every proposal is likely to be so complex. Also, in the RFEI, as been pointed out by some members of the council, it is very clear.
Who was
What
the-
the language you're talking about, that's not what you just read.
Where did that
Read
originate,
where it's-
really?
Well, read where it says that it sells.
It's a press release? Did we release it?
Go to the sentence that you're referring to, that the press release says that the city intends to sell the system.
Well, I stand corrected on the date of issue, but there was a press release that had that language in it.
But that's not the one you have.
Accurate language, and you didn't read.
It is accurate language, and that's what's disturbing. The RFEI itself says that you would consider sale or long-term lease of the water system. It's in the third paragraph under the opening of the RFEI. And then this comes about, but yet we keep getting assurance from council members that this is not what we plan to do. So I really don't want to get into an argument about it. I just want to make a recommendation.
I want to see it for myself.
I
if you
made
Sure.
copies of it for you.
Sure.
I read from it myself earlier.
You did. She read from the same press release, and I copied it, and that's the
yesterday?
sentence I read.
Okay, go
Anyway,
ahead.
what I think would be helpful, no, privatization is a very broad term, and some parts of privatization I don't think any of us find objectionable. For example, private provision of various service and supplies, such as laboratory work or supplying chemicals, or even meter reading. Those are the efficiencies, I think, that some members of council want to get through these RFEIs. And in fact, in that same press release that I mentioned earlier, it talks about some of those efficiencies, like getting new technology. We're all for that. We're all for efficiencies. What I think I'm hearing from members of the public is, we don't want to sell it. We don't want to rent it, either for 1 year or 20 years. We don't want to enter into complex financial arrangements that end up actually being a loan on top of a loan, which is what a lot of these private-public financial things do. So if you take those three things off the table through this resolution that's before you, you can still go forward with the RFEI process. It's just that when somebody sends a proposal forward that says, we want to buy it, you don't even open the envelope. I think I have a little more time because of the conversation and questions, just for a last comment. Where I grew up in the foothills, I used to hear advice all the time to young men, don't go courting an ugly old lady because you might end up marrying her. And that's what I think we're doing. I think privatization is the ugly old lady, and if we court her, we're going to end up marrying her. I was told that the lobbyists for all of these big multinational companies have been with you guys for a year, off and on for a year, whether you're in Washington, they're here tonight. I was told they come to all the meetings. You don't have to do this to please them. We can go forward with an efficiency study that is open and honest and does not consider selling, leasing, or financing our water system with a private entity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms.
Kit, let me just, Kit. And I think what you said was part of what I think we were trying to get to is if we got responses to the RFI, whatever, and Ryan and Bill and Ms. Sanders are there at the table, does that address some of your concerns that that's not going to?
I think transparency, and obviously I have a different standard for notice and voting than maybe the staff and council do, and that's for another day. I think it would help to make the process more transparent. But I think what we're looking for is to say, we're not going to sell it, we're not going to rent it, and we're not going to enter into any dangerous public-private, and then that empowers the staff And also in the RFI process, Mr. Vine, it says that you will engage consultants to help evaluate these things. That's going to cost $100,000 to evaluate some of these complex proposals to sell the water, to buy the water company, if you don't reject them out of hand. So what I think would go a long way to restoring confidence in the assurances that we're receiving is to vote and say, we're not going to sell it, we're not going to rent it, and we're not going to enter into any of these public-private finance deals. And then turn it over to the staff and a group to evaluate them. But just say, we'll look at chemicals, or we'll look at put it in new kind of meters, or we'll look at upgrading technology, but we're not going to sell it, we're not going to rent it, and we're not going to finance it to the disadvantage of the public.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kit. The next person is Ms. Pamela Greenlaw.
Yeah, she's first, and then Ms. Greenlaw's last.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Hayes. I live at 137 Chatham Trace in Columbia, 29229. I am relatively new to the area. My family moved up here a little less than a year ago from Charleston. New opportunities and new geographics, and it's been great so far. I saw a wide variety of things on the internet, and of course it's on the internet, it must be true, that there was consideration of privatization of Columbia's water and sewer system. I will repeat a lot of the things that most of these people say, so I apologize for that. I actually had the same documentation that Elaine referenced, the top 10 reasons to oppose. And it's scary to think that by 2025, which is 10 years from now, and my daughter will be 16, scares the bejesus out of me, let me just tell you, that 2/3 of the drinking water around the world will be in short supply, that the 21st century's oil is water, according to Fortune magazine. I mean, if that doesn't scare the bejesus out of people, I don't know what would. And to even propose privatizing it. We have a privatized healthcare system, ladies and gentlemen, and look how fantastic that works in our country. Privatizing our water source is a bad idea from the start to the finish. They will raise rates. They will lower water quality. I like being able to come in front of you and say X, Y, and Z and air my grievances as a public to servant, because that's the way this works. I can't do that to stockholder or shareholder XYZ of company ABC because I'm not allowed to do that. And that's bogus because it's my drinking water, it's my family, it's your family, it's our businesses. There are ways to go about making things more efficient. I think I'm in agreement with many people here that if most of you have aired that you don't agree with privatization, then just put it out there. We don't want it privatized. We don't want it sold. We don't want it combined and packaged and refinanced and sold off to who knows who to do who knows what. Just put it out there. And then don't waste don't waste that time of yourselves, your staff, the people in the business sector that are considering to purchase our water system and or sewer system. Because it's just a big waste of time, because most of you sitting in front of me right now have said that you are not about that. So put it out there, move forward, and efficiencies, by the way, if SCE&G in Charleston gave you incentives and deductions if you upgraded your energy efficiencies in your homes, those things can happen. If you upgrade your washing machine or your dishwasher and things of that nature to keep the rates down, but allow a little bit more control in the public sector of how that affects them. So thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Good evening. Thank you for listening to us. My name is Pamela Greenlaw. I live at 1001 Wotam Road. And I like the resolution. I think you should pass it. I'd like to see it a little stronger. I think that it does disallow the city manager to sell or lease, to enter into service concession agreements. I don't know how you would make it stronger, but the idea of public-private partnerships are contractual arrangements that necessarily include confidentiality agreements. Therefore, they cannot be transparent. The public can't know what's in a confidentiality agreement that you would enter into with a private company. You've heard already, and you know, private companies are beholden to investors who want a guaranteed return with no or low financial risk. This is why they invest. I would, wouldn't you? This is what our electricity grid, this is what the investor-owned utilities are about. They're not public utilities. They're investor-owned utilities. And when you ask what the agreements are, you cannot, the private citizen has no right to read them. Things are taken off the table to protect the utilities. And you don't want to do that with your water utility. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Brett Bursey, I'm sorry, is it Jennifer Gordon? Ma'am? Do you want to speak on this issue as well, ma'am? Okay, it didn't say water system, it said poorly written resolution.
I'd like to
Yes, ma'am.
correct the grammar
Yes, ma'am. Ms.
Second
Gardner?
of the second resolution,
Yes, ma'am.
because it's not clear.
Okay, please.
All right,
That-
it says here, city council instructs the city manager not to sell, lease, enter into a service concession arrangement, or not to, let's be redundant, or not to refinance the city's water and wastewater treatment and distribution system, and further, to express to all interested parties, be they purchasers, leasors, concessionaires, whatever, list them out. City council's intent, this is a word I'm not happy with, not to allow the sale, lease, service, concession arrangement, or refinance of the system. That's clear. Can you change it? Because you've thrown in a gerund which shouldn't be there. So would you just...
City attorney would need to see if there's any clarity.
You basically have three underlying clauses. So you've got to, well, she's looking at it now, so I assume she's looking at it.
She's saying that the way it reads, it doesn't
It's
read
not clear.
properly. It's not.
Well, it's not grammatically clear. And further, not to express. I didn't know that, Ms. Wilson, you have the power to, this,
She doesn't. And that's,
but
that's,
that, when negating that, the underlying assumption is she has the power.
and she does not.
So, I'm sort of,
Ms. Gardner, that was one of the things that. if
You gotta be
there is
careful
an
about
amendment,
language.
We were talking about that
Right?
as well.
I think
The
you gotta be
resolution.
careful. Ms. Plow has a point. You can't be contradicting yourself all the time, but we got a lot of lawyers here, so that's the problem. The privatization, I want to give you a couple of examples. I'm kind of sitting on the fence on this because Ms. Plow had informed us at a meeting that when you broke the lease in the 1990s, late 1990s, that it was a nightmare, right? Well, I have to go by her experience. So, however, city councils are not always so great about controlling water or thinking about water. For example, in Fresno, California, there was, I'm not sure it's true now, but there was a $25 limit to your water bill. So you could use as much water as you want. You could have leaking pipes, et cetera, et cetera. So There's always a little problem with privatization, but of course, they're going to make you pay the true cost. And I think sometimes we ought to remember that. They'll force you to pay the true cost of running a system. Efficiencies, I know you're talking about electronic stuff. I'm not so crazy about the way the city runs its water and sewer situation, though they have some terrific workers. I know who they are now, so I don't want to condemn the whole system. But one efficiency, I just want to mention one efficiency, and that is, do you have a map of the underlying sewers? If we could just start with a map. That's what I would like to see happen. So I don't have the water people, the sewer people telling me on my street that my water meter is not in my backyard, but is on the street. And we get into arguments about it.
Thank you.
So just rewrite this so it's correct.
Thank you, Ms. Gardner. Brett Bursey, then Joe Azar, the last two folks who's out to speak. Hey, Brett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to talk about privatization. Y'all have enough to think about. I think you've got some concerns. You should listen to Councilor Plow's Resolution 25 and issue a statement that you're not going to privatize. Nobody's talked about Resolution 24. If y'all, this is a softball to you guys, pass Resolution 24, and then the public will know, oh, you guys are going to let us vote on it. Now, let me sum this up for you a little bit because it's really important. In this privatization matter and the issue of taking away the citizens' right to vote on selling public utilities is symptomatic of the economic problems facing this country and this world. I work a lot at the legislature. I have watched the legislature in the last few years prevent you, councilors, from creating any type of benefits for people that work for you. I have watched this council not work for you, work for the city. You can't give a requirement for a public to get a business permit that everybody in the city offer earned sick leave, like they're doing around the country, like they do in 135 other nations as a statutory matter. You can't pass a law because of the legislature that's more stringent environmentally than the state law. You can't have a wage higher than the federal wage. These are state legislative actions that are reining in your power. It is a direct assault on democracy. Resolution 24, Councilor Plow has put before you, says that this body will not support the legislation that passed the House last year. It was H 5005. It passed, and it would have taken away my right as a citizen of this city to be able to vote on whether I want to sell my water system or not. Don't give that away. This is a little cover for you guys. Vote yes for Resolution 24. Let the people decide whether we want to sell our water system or not. Thanks.
It's always good coming after Brett. He always fires everybody up. Good evening. I'm Joseph Azar, citizen of Columbia, born here and all. Unfortunately, I'm the last. I was waiting for somebody from the citizens to come up and say why we should sell the water system, but nobody has yet. I don't think anybody's in favor of that. You know, Columbia did this, what was it, back in the 90s, I believe, Leona? Did we not? And it failed. We took it back.
Sewer system.
Yes. We also see that Atlanta did it. It failed. You know, actually, Atlanta could have worked, but the city council got in the way. Talking to a water commissioner in this state, he said part of the problem was the council kept messing with the privatization of that. So Atlanta failed. But we did this back in 95. You know, if we had taken this roughly 3% that you extract from the water and sewer every year, and sometimes more, the old stitch in time saves 9 might have worked. We might have repaired our system and not been in the position we're in now, but we're continuing to take that money. So what are we selling? Are we selling a water plant? Are we selling a sewer plant? Are we selling the pipes under the street, the sewer pipes, the water pipes? If we're selling it all, if we're not selling it all, first of all, who's going to take care of the pipes? Is it us still? Who? And if we're selling it all, then what would it cost to put those pipes in the ground? You're talking $2 billion, $3 billion to build out an infrastructure in this city, in this community, that the city of Columbia owns, maybe more, to build it up. And talking to this water commissioner from our state, he said, I said, you know, if we sell all that, we're going to double our rates. He said, no way. He said, you're going to triple them at least triple your rates. He said, Columbia's got problems. You guys have done some dumb things there. If you want efficiencies, yes. If you want efficiencies, you can get those very easily. You can talk to the EPA, DHEC, Sierra Club, Coastal Conservation League. There are plenty of people who would come into our community and help us with this at little or no cost. But how about another idea? Why don't we spin this off? Why don't we turn it into a separate governmental entity, a water and sewer commission, with elected commissioners who are dedicated only to water and sewer, clean water, no sewer spills, and they're elected by the people because we, the people here, own that system. All we're doing is moving it over and letting another group handle it, and we won't have this 3% taken out. We don't have this negligence, and we can vote those people out, and it's a separate thing. I believe tonight is the night the citizens, all of us, should exercise our legal right to initiate a referendum on this issue, to vote and see if the public would like this as a separate water and sewer system devoted only to water and sewer. The monies that come in and go out are dedicated only to water and sewer, not baseball parks, not festivals, nothing else except clean water, clean sewer. Thank you very much. Good evening.
You already have a motion on the first one.
Yeah. Aggressively resisted the temptation to respond to a number of different comments, but all of them have been taken into account, and we appreciate everyone for being here. We actually appreciate everyone being so civil and respectful of the process as well. Very good information. There's a motion properly seconded on the floor. I'm not sure if it was Mr. Gray. I'm not sure who actually mentioned it. Actually, to pass number 24. It was Brett. It was Brett, actually. I made the motion, and I think Mr. Newman may have seconded it. I'm sorry?
We haven't voted yet.
Yeah. Any other further discussion on that one? Because, Brett, I think it's clear, not just to you all, but to all of us, that this system belongs to the people, and that any discussions of this moving forward ought to be decided by the people. So that law, that bill that was introduced last year has not been reintroduced this session, and if it does show back up, we will clearly express our support. I'd rather the resolution be.
We haven't voted
Yeah. I made a motion. Yes, I made a motion to approve Resolution 24. Yeah, I did. And Mr. Newman seconded it. I'm not sure. You may not have been in here. I think you may not have been here yet. And there were a number of other issues, and obviously we expect a number of them to flesh themselves out throughout this process about employees and the fact that everyone I've talked to on council and staff would expect that under any other scenario, all employees would be retained. All employees would receive potential pay increases and training. So a lot of these things have been discussed over the course of time. But in any event, we're at the process right now where we're trying to get ideas, but getting back to the issue of public trust and public ownership of this system. I think there's probably universal support here on that very first resolution that we certainly would support current state law on any disposition of the system. I'll move the previous question on item 24.
Mr. Badura? Mr. Runyon?
Aye.
Mr. Newman?
Aye.
Ms. Plow? Aye. Mr. Vine?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mayor Benjamin?
Aye. The second one is much more challenging because I think it does, as Ms. Gardner mentioned, have a number of different statements in it that just are not fact. The city manager does not have the authority to do a whole bunch of things in here. The and again, the habit or the process of spending a lot, and I shudder. Ms. Gentry is not here this week. She and her staff have put a great deal of work into this effort. I wish I could ask the CFO to sit down and do a back-of-the-envelope calculation of exactly how many man-hours we've used to get to this point, and to pass a resolution that essentially guts the entire RFEI without even the benefit of having the opportunity to hear ideas, I think is wrong-headed, and I can't support the second resolution. I think in the interest of transparency, the fact that council's spoken unanimously on item 24 shows the direction in which we believe that the public trust needs to be reflected. I also believe that the process that I might admit is a lot different than the consideration of proposals and bids and even RFEI in the past that includes a much more broader spectrum of citizen activists, including those that are philosophically predisposed to oppose this. Also adds a degree of transparency to this process. It's probably going to add a bit of headaches to the city manager's plate. But I think again, it's something that we need to commit to, and between now and the next meeting, figure out exactly what that looks like. I get a sense just from talking to some of my colleagues here that everyone would like to have some input in who exactly serves, but I do think having the Riverkeeper, having representation from Sustainable Midlands and others is something we need to give consideration exactly how that looks. Ms. Plow and please, Ms. Plow.
Mayor, I would like to move the approval of Resolution 2015-05015 with the following addition. Added at the end of the therefore be it resolved, at the very end, I would add, provided, however, that nothing in this resolution shall be construed to prohibit or limit the future ability of the city to issue bonds for refinancing purposes. I am asking that we go ahead and take a vote because I have really not heard anything thus far other than either the timing is bad or maybe there is some improvement in the technical language, but the sense of this resolution, I've not heard anyone address. So I would ask that, I would move that we go ahead and vote on the resolution, Mayor.
Second.
Ms. Devine.
And I don't know where everybody is on this, but just a couple things, Leon, I would just point out, I think as Ms. Gardner pointed out, and I've played with lots of language. I've given it to several of you. People don't like it, so I don't have an offer of specific language, but a couple things. Number one, it is factually incorrect in that instructing the city manager not to sell, lease, whatever. The city manager does not have that authority. So I would suggest that potentially be addressed. But even still, I think that under our current state law, it would require a referendum to move forward with selling our system. And I understand, and I guess I need to understand or learn more about the scenario you were mentioning about selling the debt, and I don't know if that has to be addressed through something separate, but you know, I still remain concerned that we not have the ability to allow this process to go forward. And I know that you and I discussed it, that that's not your intention to not receive responses to the RFEI, but I would hope that somehow we could express affirmatively that we still want to receive responses so that it doesn't prohibit anybody from submitting responses with efficiencies. So I don't know if you've got any other suggested language for that, but I would like to maybe see if we could address those two things.
I would offer an amendment to the resolution to clarify the point that the city manager does not have the authority to sell, lease, or enter into a service arrangement, that, and that amended language would read that the mayor and city council of the city of Columbia are instructing the city manager not to bring to city council any action that would require the sale, lease, or enter into a service agreement, service concession agreement, or refinancing of the city's water and sewer and distribution center, and thereby expressing council's intent not to allow such sale, lease, service concession, or arrangement or refinancing, provided, however, that nothing in this resolution shall be construed to prohibit or limit the future ability of the city to issue bonds for refinancing purposes. And I would hope my second would accept that language.
I accept. Second.
For clarity, why there's some conversation up here, one of the reasons that this language, I think, was written in this fashion is the city attorney wanted to make sure that we were directing the city manager to do something. So I think with that, we are directing her not to bring this to us, that we are not interested in it. I don't know if Ms. Devine has some clarification on the, because we are interested, let me read the other paragraph that's in this resolution, that a request of expression of interest entitled the efficiency opportunity related to the operation maintenance of the water and sewer and treatment and distribution system public-private partnership was issued in receipt of information from qualified entities who may be interested in offering various means of improving the efficiency of the city's water and sewer treatment and distribution system. So what that is trying to say is that's what we're interested in receiving, and make it very clear we're not interested in receiving responses that result in the sale, lease, or concession arrangements or refinancing of the system. We are interested in efficiencies, and that's why that was written that way.
Well, that's what I,
Let me,
well, that's what I was about to ask.
can I say this?
Well,
You were going
can
to say
I
the
ask-
same thing.
Maybe. I was just going to say, I mean, we meet next week. Can we not, you and I, get together with the city attorney and work on language that's clearer? Nothing's going to happen between now and next week. I mean, we don't even have the responses. I think there are some issues with the way this is worded, and I think we might have some unintended consequences. Our whole goal is to express an interest of not selling the system.
We just did that.
Which, I mean, yeah, in essence, number one, the first resolution does that because we can't sell the system without a public vote. But I understand we need something that gives some assurance to the citizens, and maybe flesh that out, this as well as how a citizens review panel would look, maybe an appointee by every council member. So just work out some more details, you and I with the city attorney, city manager, and propose something for next week.
And, I'm sorry. Well, I was
Teresa.
just going to add, which I was going to say earlier, I mean, the staff is interested in doing whatever the council directs us to do as far as the input portion with, I mentioned this at the community meeting, I mean, we're definitely in favor of, citizen input. You also have a committee process of council. You have an environment and infrastructure committee of council that, being that this seems to keep manifesting itself into what has staff tried to do or put together based off what we were directed to do with the council going forward, and I'd like to be more involved in the process as well.
We're not interested in selling, leasing, or the service arrangement or refinancing.
Well, the difference is I'm trying to be on the microphone, not off the microphone. The challenge is that you spend years and then thousands of man hours in constructing an approach, and then you spend 3 days dismantling that. And I just think that's not the way that we move forward. If there's an opportunity for compromise and consideration between something that obviously has been tried to get done here, would the 7 more days hurt to try and work out some language that makes sense and allows us to reach some consensus that we can all agree to?
Don't consider private. My mind's not working anymore.
Closer to the goal that we've been working towards, the state of the system. I think there's some basic languages, key terms that we've already agreed on in terms of what we expect bottom line.
You know, we can't be afraid to ask questions. We can't be afraid to ask questions. And wait, and also, I'm not talking to you, Sam. Yeah, but I'm just speaking to our constituents here. We can't be afraid to ask questions. We can't be afraid to receive answers, and we can't be afraid to say no. I mean, if in fact we get some ideas back that make sense for the people of Columbia, we bring those ideas back to the people of Columbia. If those ideas make sense, then maybe we adopt some of them. If they don't make sense, maybe we don't adopt any of them. But we bring them back to the people of Columbia. If in fact there's some major decision that has to be made, we take it to the people in a vote. But you have to be willing to ask questions. So that's my only additional submission.
I'm sorry, your submission to what? Oh, just, that's your
Yeah,
comment.
that's it.
There's nothing.
I'd say I have a motion.
Well, there is a motion.
Oh, no, there's a motion on the floor. I'm going to move the table the motion on the floor. Move the table, excuse me. I'm going to move to table the resolution for reconsideration the second meeting in March. So we can have this back before us. What day is that, Madam Clerk? So we can have this back.
17.
We can have this back before us, but at least then we'll be informed. We'll have the information before us, and I'd also like, as we table that motion, also establish the fact that we're going to have a citizen committee as part of this process. We can make it a 7-person appointee because everyone wants to have some say in this. I'd ask Ms. Nevis to serve as my representative as we evaluate these proposals going forward. But we want to make sure that we'll have a date certain to consider Ms. Plow's resolution. Which date is that, Madam Clerk?
March 17th.
March 17th. We'll have the benefit of the responses before us, and we'll also have the benefit of citizen involvement between now and then 7 members, 1 appointed by each member of City Council. But there is a motion to table, which I believe is non-debatable. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Can I just say, I would, if that's going to be considered, I'd ask for something specific on, like, every member of council get an appointee no later than,
Tuesday.
yeah, next week, so that there would be a committee already in place prior to the proposals coming in, so that there's no concern that we're doing anything before proposals come in. So that would be my friendly amendment, I guess.
Accepted. It's non-debatable motion.
I'd still like to address it if I could.
Okay, oh, please. Well, usually Leon is pulling parliamentary procedure rules on me, so please, Ms. Plow.
I would like to ask the mayor to withdraw his table. And I would then like to withdraw my motion and give us an opportunity to work on language to bring back next week. So I would ask the mayor to kindly consider withdrawing his table so that we can proceed in that fashion.
Withdrawn. No other matters before us. Non-debatable motion to adjourn.
No, well,
we've
first of all,
got-
then she still would have to withdraw her motion.
Yeah.
Mine's
And then I want
withdrawn.
to raise.
Yours withdrawn.
Withdraw my motion with understanding we will take it up next
Yeah,
week.
But I still would like council members to have, be ready for an appointee by next Tuesday.
I will share, and I will also participate in discussions with Ms. Plow and Ms. Devine. Did I miss somebody? Is there anybody else who? Who else signed up?
Would you be clear
was
with
good.
the
We're
public,
good.
Mayor? I don't think they understand what we just did.
We're going to, I withdrew my motion to table. Ms. Plow withdrew her motion for approval of item 25. We're going to come back, again, as we urged earlier, with something on Tuesday that reflects more of a consensus of council opinion on how to move forward with this. There does seem to be a broad general consensus that we will have much more citizen input and participation in this process going forward, and we need council members to share their thoughts with staff between now and then.
Would you
No,
say-
that's withdrawn. That's withdrawn.
That's withdrawn.
Ms. Bull. That's
Next week.
we'll be here on Tuesday, ma'am. Tuesday coming. Tuesday week.
But the new
Week from
language,
today.
the proposal of the new language should, hopefully
Yeah.
will be available by Friday, so
yeah,
you'll have a
by
chance to
Friday.
look at it by Tuesday.
Move we adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Do we have additional executive session matters, Madam City Manager, that need to be resolved tonight?
Do we have to?
Do we have to?
Okay. Move the previous question. Clerk, call a roll.
Mr. Badura, Mr. Runyon.
Aye.
Mr. Newman.
Aye.
Ms. Plow. Ms. Devine. Mr. Davis.
Aye.
And Mayor Benjamin. Have a great evening.
No bad. What did y'all agree to? What y'all agree to? Okay. Okay. You have anything to go back to when?